A few years ago, before all the pandemic stuff started, my fiance and I traveled out of town for an event. We booked a hotel room for the week through one of those booking websites. Things started going wrong right from the start when we got placed in a handicap room and charged extra for it. The sink was hanging loose from the wall when we arrived, and it completely fell out not long after we checked in. We went straight to the manager about it. She seemed really concerned and told us that room wasn't even supposed to be available because of an incident that happened there the week before. She immediately moved us to a different room, gave me her business card, and wrote up a receipt saying we'd get $100 off our stay for all the trouble. I tucked everything into my wallet, and we tried to enjoy the rest of our stay. Everything was fine until the day before we were supposed to leave. I got really bad heat sickness and passed out for a few hours. When I woke up, I found the front door wide open and all the stuff from my purse scattered everywhere. I freaked out and ran to the door, where I bumped into my fiancé. He'd gone to get dinner and bring back some pain relief and cold drinks for me, thinking I'd still be asleep. He was really upset because he'd seen someone leaving our room and thought I'd let someone in until I showed him my scattered purse contents. We had a bit of an argument about it until he realized I was telling the truth. After helping me clean up, we called the manager. The only things missing were $50 from my purse and that receipt from the manager about our $100 discount. The manager told us she'd made a note about the discount in the system and would be there at 8 a.m. when we needed to check out. Neither of us slept well that night. The next morning we went to check out right at 8, but instead of the manager, there was this kid at the desk who couldn't have been older than a college freshman. The moment I walked in, he treated me like I was dirt. When I asked to speak with the manager, he rudely told me she wasn't there. When I asked when she'd be back, he snapped at me, saying probably in a few hours, and demanded I either tell him what I wanted or get out. I went outside to tell my fiancé about this kid's attitude. He suggested I just try to check out since the discount should be noted in the system. When I went back in, it only got worse. The kid practically screamed at me, demanding to know what I wanted. When I meekly said I just wanted to check out, he rolled his eyes and asked for my room number. When he saw the note about the $100 discount, I explained about the break-in and the stolen money and receipt. That's when things got really weird. He claimed the $100 was actually for damages and said I needed to pay even more in cash right now. When I asked to wait for the manager, he started yelling at me to either pay up or leave. I sat in the lobby while my fiancée finished loading the car. Then I remembered I had the manager's card with her emergency number. The moment I started dialing, the kid came running out, screaming and trying to grab the card from my hand. When I wouldn't give it up, he threatened to call the police and stormed off like a toddler throwing a tantrum. We ended up leaving since we were running late, and we actually passed the manager pulling in as we drove out. She called me a few minutes later, but our conversation got cut short when she said police had shown up with a crowd of people. She called back later with the whole story. Turns out the kid never called the police. Other guests did. A bunch of rooms had been broken into, someone's car was stolen, and while the kid was yelling at everyone, he dropped some keys that belonged to another guest. The police figured out this kid and his friends had been stealing from hotel guests and selling whatever they could take. When the police confronted him, he tried to act innocent and demanded they arrest all the guests for harassment instead. He got arrested, and all the guests pressed charges. I got my money back, but a few weeks later, the hotel called to warn me that the kid was trying to press charges against me and had shown up demanding my contact information. Nothing ever came of it though. Apparently, the kid and his friends had been running this scam at several hotels in the area. The police found most of the stolen stuff at his apartment, including items from other hotels. He ended up getting charged with multiple counts of theft, breaking and entering, and even assault for trying to grab things from guests. Last I heard, he was looking at serious jail time, and the hotel chain banned him from all their properties. The manager later told me the kid had only worked there for 2 weeks, but they found security footage of him letting his friends into rooms while guests were out. He'd even disabled some of the security cameras on his shifts. The whole thing was way more organized than anyone expected from someone who acted like such an entitled brat when he got caught. I'm a 20-year-old African American male working two jobs to make ends meet. One of those jobs is as a substitute custodian at my old school, where my mother also works. I specifically chose to work with the younger kids in the primary and elementary sections rather than the middle and high school levels. The kids are great. Making them laugh is one of the best parts of my day, and the staff seems to appreciate it too. When I first started, I was told by both my supervisor and my mother that they needed a male presence there, since there weren't any other male staff members in the primary or elementary sections. They needed someone who could be a voice of authority when necessary. This was during the pandemic, and I've been working there for about a year. Most parents knew me either through their kids or because they knew my mother. One day during lunch, the kids were getting pretty rowdy. They were yelling and not listening to their teacher, who was trying to get them to quiet down. I was there keeping an eye out for any spills or helping kids open their lunch packages if they needed help. When I saw the teacher struggling to get their attention, I stepped in. Now, I don't usually like raising my voice, but I knew these kids, so I used my authoritative voice to tell them to quiet down and put them on zero, which means complete silence during lunch. The staff was impressed with how I handled it, but apparently one kid didn't like it and called their mother. Later that day, as I was heading to my car after school, a woman stopped me. The moment I saw her attitude, I knew she was a Karen. She didn't have the stereotypical haircut or clothes, but her demeanor said it all. I have issues controlling my anger when people yell at me, but working with kids had helped me manage it better. Still, I could tell this conversation wouldn't go well. She immediately demanded to know if I was the one who had yelled at her child. I tried to explain that I was yelling at all the kids to be quiet after their teacher had attempted to control the situation, but she cut me off, telling me not to yell at her child. I wasn't having any of it. I cut her off right back, telling her that just because her kid walks all over her doesn't mean I or anyone else would allow it. I told her I was leaving and said goodbye. I walked away, ignoring whatever else she was saying. A few days later, I was taking a smoke break in my car after lunch duty when I heard a knock on my window. There she was again, standing with her hands on her hips. I sighed and rolled down my window. When I acknowledged her, she immediately started lecturing me about how smoking wasn't prohibited on school grounds. I pointed out that was exactly why I was in my car. She then threatened that she could get me fired for yelling at her kids and smoking on school grounds. I couldn't help but chuckle because I had just noticed our campus police officer pulling up behind her. This specific officer was known for having zero tolerance for harassment. Karen stormed over to him, rambling about everything under the sun. I finished my cigarette and walked over to join them. I greeted the officer casually, asking how he was doing. Before he could even respond, Karen interrupted, complaining about me smoking on school grounds. The officer simply asked if I had been in my car. Both Karen and I confirmed that, yes, I had been. The officer then explained that he saw no problem with it since I wasn't technically on school grounds, and warned her that if she continued to harass staff members, she would be arrested. Karen's face turned red. She ran back to her car and returned with her phone, supposedly to record us. She shoved it in our faces, threatening to sue and have us fired. Then, in a bizarre turn of events, she actually clapped herself and tried to claim the officer had hit her. While she was ranting about definitely getting him fired now, I laughed and pointed at the security camera right above us. The moment she saw the camera, all the color drained from her face, and she walked away without another word. The officer and I still laugh about it whenever we see each other. A few months later, we found out she had quite the criminal record: stealing, harassment, assault, child endangerment, and she had even slapped a different police officer before. She ended up getting arrested and serving time, and her husband divorced her. Her kid was moved to a different school district to live with their father, and from what I hear, they're doing much better now. Living in a high-rise apartment building as a teenager can be interesting, especially when you're trying to balance your studies with the constant stream of neighborhood drama. I'm a 16-year-old high school student who moved here with my mom after my parents divorced 2 years ago. We chose this building because it's close to both my school and her workplace. Plus, it has these massive balconies that make the place feel more spacious than it actually is. Between each floor's balcony, there's this weird empty space, kind of like a void area. The building's design is pretty unique that way. The local kids love playing cricket in the courtyard below, and they always position themselves facing my side of the building because there's this box-like space that makes for a perfect target. As you can guess, their balls frequently get stuck in that void space between the balconies. Now, I'm generally a patient person. These kids show up at my door every few days, looking all hopeful that I can somehow magically retrieve their lost balls. I always explain nicely that it's physically impossible to reach that space safely, and they usually understand. In our community, there's this unwritten rule that you have to be overly friendly with your neighbors, even if they're complete strangers who show up unannounced at your door. It's kind of ridiculous, but that's just how things work here. Today started like any other day. I was in the middle of my online Japanese class, something I've been taking to prepare for a student exchange program next year. That's when I heard the doorbell ring. I paused my lesson, thinking it was probably another kid looking for their cricket ball. Instead, I opened the door to find this woman I'd never seen before. She was in her 40s, significantly overweight, with this awful bleached blonde bob haircut and thick black glasses. Without even a greeting, she immediately demanded that I retrieve her son's cricket ball that had supposedly landed in my house. Her tone was condescending, as if I was some servant who should jump at her commands. I tried to explain politely that this was a common occurrence and that the balls land in an unreachable void space between the balconies, making retrieval impossible and dangerous. But she wasn't having any of it. She started guilt-tripping me, accusing me of making her son sad and questioning what kind of heartless person I was. That's when she called over her son, who I hadn't noticed before. The poor kid, probably around 12, was practically hiding behind the wall, clearly embarrassed by his mother's behavior. She ordered her son to enter my apartment and get the ball himself. The kid just stood there frozen, obviously aware of how dangerous and inappropriate the whole situation was. When he didn't move, she yelled the command again, even louder this time. I had to step in and tell her that this was my house, and if she tried to enter, I would call the police. Her response was to call me a horrible neighbor and threatened to sue me for theft, claiming she had paid money for the ball. When I pointed out the absurdity of suing me for a ball that they had lost, she completely lost it. She tried to physically shove me aside to enter my apartment. When I didn't budge, she tried again with more force. I work out regularly and take self-defense classes, so when she came at me the second time, I used her momentum against her and pushed back just enough to make her stumble backward. She didn't fall, but it was enough to show her I wasn't some pushover kid she could bully. She immediately started screaming about assault, grabbing her son's arm and dragging him away while threatening me with her husband and the police. The kid managed to give me a tiny smile and eye roll as he was being pulled away, and I couldn't help but grin back. About an hour later, I heard commotion in the hallway. Through the peephole, I saw her with a police officer and who I assumed was her husband. I opened the door before they could knock. The police officer asked about the assault complaint, so I invited them in and showed them my security camera footage, something she clearly hadn't expected. The footage captured everything, including her attempts to force her way into my apartment and my measured response to her aggression. The officer then turned to her and explained that the footage showed her attempting to enter my residence without permission and initiating physical contact. He asked if she wanted to proceed with pressing charges, warning that she could face charges herself for attempted breaking and entering. Her face transformed from smug to shocked instantly. Her husband, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke up, tersely telling her they were leaving and that they would have a serious discussion at home. I never saw her again, but I did see her son playing cricket with his friends a few weeks later. He had a new ball, and this time, when it got stuck in the void space, he just shrugged and pulled another one out of his pocket. Smart kid. After losing my wife to cancer 3 years ago, Cooper, our golden retriever, became my rock. We'd gotten him as a puppy during our first year of marriage, and now at 7 years old, He was all I had left of our life together. I downsized to a smaller place with a fenced backyard after she passed, perfect for Cooper and me. Everything was fine until new neighbors moved in next door, a mother and her young daughter about 6 years old. At first, they seemed nice enough. The girl would wave at Cooper and he'd wag his tail in response. The mother would sometimes chat with me over the fence about him. Then things got strange. I started finding treats in my backyard that I hadn't given Cooper. When confronted, the mother admitted to throwing them over the fence, saying her daughter loved feeding him. I explained that Cooper was on a special diet and asked her to stop. She seemed to accept this but started making comments about how Cooper must be lonely when I'm at work and how her daughter could keep him company. One day I came home to find Cooper missing. After searching my house frantically, I heard his familiar barking next door. When I knocked, the little girl opened the door, and there was Cooper wearing a new collar. The mother casually announced they had adopted him, showing me obviously fake adoption papers. She argued that since I didn't have kids, I didn't need Cooper as much as they did, and that her daughter needed an emotional support animal. I called the police immediately. When they arrived, I provided Cooper's original adoption papers, vet records, and had them scan his microchip. That's when the truth emerged. The mother had been involved in 2 other pet theft cases in different cities. She had a pattern of moving to new neighborhoods, befriending pet owners, and attempting to steal their animals using forged papers. She was arrested for theft and forgery. Her daughter went into temporary custody until her father, who knew nothing about his ex-wife's activities, could take full custody. The mother received 18 months in prison for multiple charges including endangering the welfare of a child. Cooper and I moved to a new house with better security cameras, and he got a GPS tracker on his collar. I still catch myself checking his location sometimes, even when I know he's safe in the backyard. As for Cooper, he's still his friendly self, though a bit more cautious around strangers with treats. The little girl eventually got her own dog legally through a shelter in her hometown with her father. Sometimes I think about how the worst criminals can be the ones who smile at you over your backyard fence.